Welcome back to the Forging Alpha podcast, where we talk about lifestyle, business, fitness, and what was the other thing? We were just talking about it.
Mindset, lifestyle.
Mindset, lifestyle, fitness.
We need to create
Business.
like an acronym.
We should.
Like for the nutrition scholarship I just launched, I put the core principles being MAP, mindset, application, personalization. We need to have some kind of catchy acronym for this.
If nothing else, it would just help us remember, which would be good. But today, we're talking about investing in yourself.
Investing in yourself, mentorships, all that good stuff. Because I think we've both done quite a bit of that. I think we could both contribute a degree of where we're at in our lives to investing in ourselves, mentorships, books, just the mindset involved with growing as a person.
You gotta keep growing as a person.
So let's start with you. What ways, going back to when you first started your personal development journey, for lack of a better term?
Okay. So I would say my personal development journey, I would say it started with fitness. That was the first example that I had to point to in my own life where I took action and I changed something and I liked where I was at more than where I was before. And that led into sports as well, with the realizing that the more effort you put in, the more you get out and everything like that. But then jumping into the more personal development type world, I was starting to read some Grant Cardone stuff. It was either at the end of high school or going into the beginning of college. And one of the first guys that I listened to, though, that introduced me more into that world, like I used to listen to the motivational speeches and stuff before like sports practices sometimes and whatnot to kind of get you hyped up, And I remember Todd Kane was in my freshman orientation type class in college. And one of the videos that he showed was Inky Johnson and Eric Thomas. It was Eric brought Inky Johnson on to do a speech, essentially. Do you know who that is?
Eric Thomas?
Inky Johnson.
No. The one, Thomas is the hip hop preacher, right?
Yes. Thank God It's Monday guy.
I've never heard of the other guy.
Okay. So Inky Johnson played for, I believe it was Tennessee, motivational speaker now, but he was about to go to the NFL, had a career-ending injury. He did something to it was some type of nerve thing through his arm. So now this arm is essentially paralyzed, or at least a lot weaker than the other side. Okay. So can't play in the NFL anymore. Made the most of it, but he talks about like emptying the bucket and that type of thing. Just overall mindset. And I kind of went down that Eric Thomas rabbit hole for a while, listening to all the stuff that he had on Spotify, all the podcasts that I could find that he was on. And that's kind of what opened me up to those types of people. Mm-hmm. What was the first time you remember getting into something like that?
Sports. There was, I believe it was probably the summer in Arizona. I spent with my buddy AJ down there at the facility that we were training at. There was a psychologist that they had on hand, and we worked through a book. I can't remember the exact name, but it was the 10 minute something. There was also, you work through it again in a college class, but it was pretty heavy on putting down visualization aspects for sports, specifically visualizing success, where we're at. So that was my first introduction to that, of encompassing a vision, putting it on paper, spending time visualizing. I remember at certain points, like he would even like leave us dark room, turn the lights off 10 minutes.
Really?
And we would stay in there and like visualize that before we would go out for like our hitting sessions. Yeah, like putting ourselves in that. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's very rare.
And thinking back to it, that was probably the catalyst. I'd say probably like you, I was always reading stuff, looking up. Once you kind of get down the realm of certain things, rabbit holes like Eric Thomas, reading articles. I always had a knack for it, I guess, for lack of a better term, an interest in it. But that was the definitive moment I can remember diving into that. And then from there, started journaling practices, visualization, writing down vision. And that would be the most prominent starting point I can think of.
I went through so I left college to sell cars. And that first year that I was selling cars, I think I read something like, is somewhere around 40 or 50 self-development type books. Like I lived and breathed it.
That's a lot.
And I feel like it embedded a lot of really good traits subconsciously. But a lot of it, I was just kind of reading the books. I wasn't necessarily taking action on it, or the stuff that I was reading wasn't even super applicable to what I was doing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to take like a nugget from one of those books, that could stick with you forever.
And for me, I think about it that all it takes is just one thing to flip the switch.
Yeah.
Right? One thing that's a different perspective, way you're looking at it. For me, that's in these last couple of years, the reason I've invested into mentors. And from that perspective of like, I'm looking at what I'm doing through a certain lens. I need something different, so I need to switch how I'm looking at it. Because at the end of the day, the people that have achieved success in higher levels that are at the top of the game, they're looking at things a lot differently than we are in some aspect. And so if you can get that different perspective, that different perception, that could be all you need. It doesn't have to be some grand miracle. It could be just a slight twist that sends you down the right track again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perspective is huge. We actually talked about that on our M3 podcast last night, talking about how somebody else can come into a situation, and sometimes if they don't have the full context of the entire situation, that can be better because they're looking at it from a bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to consider things that you haven't considered because you've been stuck down in the weeds the whole time.
Right.
So outside perspective is huge.
I think a great example for probably both of us is that we don't write our own workout programs. Like we use different apps, we have different coaches. Even though we could program for other people, I'm always going to do the things I really want to do. I'm going to have biases towards certain things versus a completely objective third-party view for that. Writing my own programs is better. Better workouts, better programming, doing the things that I need to have in there versus, regardless of who you are, you're always going to have a screen in front of your eyes for certain things. So
you're going to have the blinders on.
You're going to have the blinders on. That's such a thing people have a hard time overcoming. I think just in life as a whole, right, is I'm going to keep trying to do it this way, even though it hasn't worked, just because ego and being stubborn. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap and they expect some type of different result and it just doesn't happen.
And then they're either mad about it or it's some excuse about why it wasn't meant to be, right? Example for me, like recently, like the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of money on working one-on-one with people that are at the top of the game, mentors. And it's been a game changer for me. One, because how can I expect people to invest in me if I'm also not doing the same thing, right? And if they've both been, the last 2 years have been at points where hitting plateaus.
Yeah.
Like I'm climbing the mountain. I've gotten to a certain point where I don't know where I want to take the business. I've got some different ideas. It just gets to that point where I could figure it out. I could spend the next few years going through the rigors and the fire and figuring out in a very inefficient way. Or I could go to the people that know how to do it. And at the end of the day, like if you look at anybody, that it's kind of the secret of success. Kobe Bryant didn't need coaches. He was one of the best. LeBron, if there's anybody that doesn't need to be necessarily investing in nutritionists, trainers, is probably top echelon athletes. LeBron spends over $1 million per year on those aspects. But yet you think that as a high school athlete, you're going to figure it out on your own. When on the flip side of things, the most successful people are the ones that are doing that. So I think doing something scary and seeking that out, it's not going to be comfortable. Like it kind of, when you're doing it, I'm like, man, like, do I need to do this? Do I want to spend that much money on doing it? But on the flip side of things, I've just seen how much it's created action for me You pay attention to what you pay for. You're going to invest and then create a catalyst for action. Even just doing that, we know a lot of what we should be doing.
Yeah.
For certain people, relating it back to what I do with like nutrition, all the information's out there. Information, though, without application and accountability does absolutely nothing. So if you're not taking action and paying somebody to create a catalyst for action is what you need, then go do it. Why hold that up? Because for me, I'm doing some coaching with a guy named Jason Phillips. He's been at the top of the game with being a nutrition coach and then as a business coach. And I want to learn from him. I want to plug him in. I want that direction because I've hit that point of like, I don't know exactly where I want to go. I want some of these questions answered. I want perspective from somebody that's been there. And so I made the jump of doing it. And literally within a week, it has changed and reframed my way of how I'm looking at things, how I approach things. And it's just small, subtle things. Paying for it has created a catalyst for action. Like I'm on top of stuff. I'm honestly way more excited about stuff. Like you start kind of getting into the weeds of something. And when you don't necessarily know the next direction, I'm not going to say I was bored or getting bored, but
it was predictable. Probably.
When there's not a course of action or like a definite, all right, this is the target for my day. This is the intention for my day for the next few months. And you have somebody that's like, we're measuring this. We're keeping you accountable. We're checking in on it. Things can get a little bit stagnant. I think in whatever you're doing, it's kind of like if you have a coach on a sports team or you've got a boss that is really holding you accountable to things and not just letting you go off on it. You need some kind of accountability from somebody in some capacity. So yeah, man, where have you found that in terms of mentorship or other ways of investing in yourself that's kind of taking you from where you're at to the next level?
Yeah. So one of the first things that, other than like books and things like that, one of the first groups that I paid my way into was Rob Bailey's CCV group. So it's Clear, Calculated, and Vicious. And essentially what it was monthly calls, or it was weekly calls following a like monthly cycle or pattern. And the biggest thing that I got out of that, it wasn't like direct accountability style coaching. It wasn't one-on-one, but just being in those conversations and having guys talk about stuff that you're not going to hear on their social media page with like how much money they're making, doing whatever business. It just opens your eyes, in my opinion, to what's possible. And you can you level up in that way, because if you surround yourself with the same people doing the same things all the time, that kind of becomes like your bubble.
Yep. And
you forget what's going on outside of that bubble. So that's one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from it.
Yeah. I think a great quote for that, is getting in the room. Whether you got to pay to get in the room, you got to fight and claw your way into that. But you look at a lot of successful people, whether it's somebody that was fighting for a job that they just kept coming back to the office every single day because they were going to get that interview. They were going to meet that person, or they were trying to meet the person that they want to be mentored by. I think Jesse Itzler is probably like, he has so many great stories of things that he did to get in the room. And you look at the guy owns Zico, Coconut Water. He's owned probably like 15 successful businesses. And his whole premise was getting into the room. I think it was courtside Lakers seats that he couldn't afford. They were like $100,000 a pop. And they're like, that was more money than they had at the bank at that time for like two people. And he went ahead and did it. And getting those season tickets courtside at the Lakers, he said, created more conversations and connections than anything has ever done, because you're sitting right next to all influential people, successful people, just by doing that, getting into the room.
Yeah. And that's how you make some of those really big jumps that you're not going to make otherwise. Like if you can talk to somebody that's a few levels up from you that has that perspective, they can shorten the gap that it's going to take you to get there. It could have taken them 10 years to figure it out. They could cut your time down to a couple years or whatever it is.
And I am somebody that I don't like spending money on a lot of things. I overthink quite a bit of things. And for me, I know that I just need to take the jump with things like that. Literally, when I invested into this most recent mentor, there was a podcast that I was listening to. I sent it to my buddy, my colleague, AJ. And 2 days later, he texted me like, hey, I'm paying him for one-on-one coaching. Do it with me. I'm like, I pretty much just said, send me the information.
Yeah.
Send me the link to pay. I mean, it's pretty much made, I think I saw you that morning. I made that decision within the course of a couple of hours. I didn't sit around for a month, him and Han. And you notice that and you see that just with clients. I'm sure you saw that when you were in the fitness space of there's always people that are going to go back and forth, overthink things. And even if that's not in your nature, the people that are really successful know that they've got to do the uncomfortable thing. They've just got to make a jump towards something because you just got to trust on the other side of that. It's up to you and you're going to make it if you're really dedicated to it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the most recent thing that I've joined is a school program. Are you in any school groups?
So the one that I just joined, in addition to the one-on-one, there's a great school community that they have attached to that. So yes, I am in part of that with it's NCI and they call it the network.
Yeah.
Is this one that Jason Phillips does from a business perspective with the accumulation of everything with his assistant coaches, him in the business world. So tell me a little bit more about this school group.
So the school one that I joined is, I found the guy on YouTube and he was talking about law of attraction. So he studied and then sold under Bob Proctor. Are you familiar with Bob Proctor?
Bob, yes, but the name is really familiar.
Yeah.
I can't think of him off the top of my head.
Okay, so he's really big in the law of attraction manifestation type community.
Okay.
Kind of a vibration frequency type guy. And he was kind of not leading the charge on that, but he's one of the more influential people in that space. And anyways, so this guy essentially sold for Bob Proctor and studied under Bob Proctor. But the biggest value that I've gotten out of the group so far is the actual teachings from Bob Proctor. It's a program called Thinking into Results. And essentially what it's talking about is the discrepancies between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, and kind of how you translate the vision that you have in your conscious mind down to your subconscious so that you essentially become and operate as a different person. And so far, it's been awesome.
That is something that has always enticed me to with mentors when I'm looking at them and who I want to work with is the secondhand knowledge that comes with that. For instance, last year, the mentor that I worked with was directly under Bedros Keuilian. Jason Phillips has literally either been mentored by, or is friends with literally everybody within the industry that you could think to pay in the coaching, business, and fitness space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's friends with Bedros Keuilian, Craig Ballantyne. He's paid Olympia coaches, like bodybuilding coaches. He's paid majority of people. He's friends with Hormozi. Hormozi's involved with his company. So the aspect of like, you could be getting the secondhand knowledge from all of these people that they've been mentored by. To me, that's also a very attractive thing. Like, you might not be able to work with Bob Proctor or go that far, but if you've got somebody that directly worked under him, how much value and information can they share? That's something that, why I invest in myself is that people that come to work with me are also getting that secondhand information. Like, in terms of like the road mapping, the goal setting, things that I've paid tens of thousands of dollars to learn and to study and implement with myself, I then just get to use that for clients and the people that I work with too.
That's a win-win all the way around.
It's a win-win all the way around. So yeah, I mean, looking at, who somebody worked with, what other things can they pass along? Because I think if you're looking at a coach, a trainer, a mentor, they've also got to be doing that. If it's somebody that is just trying to sell you things that they've done on their own, they've never learned under anybody, they're probably just a scam artist, to be quite frank, because somebody's got to have learned from somebody that's above them in some type of way, unless they're just a complete genius that figured it out on their own. Most people have not figured that out on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. investing in yourself. So where does that come into play, do you think, in life for you right now? Is it more of books? Is it more mentorship groups? Like, where do you find that you get the most benefit in investing into yourself at this stage of life?
I would say right now it's more so the groups and the people that we've surrounded ourselves with.
Okay.
So we have a really big team that's growing fast at Moss Marketing Group. And we just brought in Adam, who has a ton of experience in sales in the automotive space. So he's helping line out and essentially create our sales department from scratch. Because we've been open just over 4 years. We went from 7 people to 20 in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, we were in a basement. We hired 3 people this week. So we're growing really fast.
That's crazy.
It is. It's pretty wild. But we were just getting into actually having a sales team. So most of my time right now has been spent directly working with Adam on the sales process and everything and getting me more integrated to that side. So thankfully, I have a mentor that's in the same office as me. So that works out pretty well. But outside of that, the biggest thing for me is I would probably say those groups and just like the information that you choose to have come through your life.
Yeah.
And the accounts that you're following and everything like that.
And that's more from like a subconscious perspective of what you're
Yeah.
what you're investing your time and your energy into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think you're getting the most out of right now?
For me, it is more one-on-one, intimate, secondhand knowledge from those people. Direct access to them. I have been a part of a couple of groups between one-on-one mentorship. And while it was good getting into those rooms, what I found is that it was honestly like too broad for me. One thing I get the most out of, even in a group setting, because all of these aspects with the one-on-one comes with some type of community, whether it's the other clients, a team that they have.
And let me preface by saying I haven't worked with anybody one-on-one like that.
Yeah.
So I haven't been in that situation yet.
Yeah. And what I noticed when I was in a group with Lion's Den, with thousands of people in it, for some people, I think that is a good thing. It's great for getting your foot into the door. But if you've got specific things that you are trying to accomplish, certain places that you want to go, it was a little bit too broad for me, and almost that mass appeal, the amount of people that were in there, diluted down the people that I wanted to be around with. I think it was a great environment. You obviously are a step closer to being in a setting where people are investing in themselves,
being
looking
on the
at things.
being on the Lions Den platform is a lot different than being on Facebook.
Yes, 100%.
But it's not the same as a tight, close group.
No. So I would say, for anybody that's looking to start that, get into a circle in some capacity that is more aligned with the values or where you're trying to take your life. But I think if you've got a certain place that you want to go, you need to have somebody working with you very closely for that. So I just noticed that I was not getting as much out of that because I was not talking to the person who ran that group one-on-one for personalized questions and aspects relating directly to my life, my business, my circumstances. So even though you're paying more for it, twice the results come from, for me anyway.
Probably more.
The one-on-one mentorship for people that can get inside, have that bird's eye view of like, hey, you need to be doing these things. You need to be doing this, that, this, just different ways for me, specific examples of certain people are always just preaching on social media, where Jason came in initially and he started talking about you need to start really fostering the relationships that you have. You've built up this trust and this value with different companies, facilities, and most of your ideal clientele are probably going to be found there versus randomly out on social media. So why don't you tap into that first and foremost? That is your main priority now. Foster the relationships with these people that you have. Lean into that, become the main source of value, give them everything you have, and you're probably set for what you need to be doing right now versus that. So also just putting you into the lane that you need to go, because what you might be doing right now isn't necessarily wrong. Building up a following in social media isn't necessarily the wrong approach, but is it streamlined towards the destination as efficiently as possible? So, that just shift to a different lane for me could be a game changer when we're talking about the months, the years, and shaving off the timeline for that.
Yeah, it's not just about finding a bigger audience, it's strengthening the audience that you already have. Obviously, if you do both, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't just have to grow on social media to have an effective plan for social media.
100%.
If you can have a deeper connection with people, I think Craig Ballantyne does an awesome job of that. I engage with some of his stories and stuff, and he'll like send out books to people. I think he said in one of the videos that he said he sends something like $5,000 worth of books a year at least. And he knows that if he sends out $5,000 in books, X amount of people are going to sign up for his high ticket coaching program. That's a really easy way to do it, because then you're providing so much value to people completely for free, and that's going to come back around. But at the same time, you're also building that connection with the audience that you already have.
And something that I have found across the board that is a consistent theme with all of the people that are at the top.
Yes. Is
the amount of value that they give other people, a lot of times for free, always comes back to them. So the guy that I'm working with right now, he built up a huge business by going to CrossFit gyms and giving them free value, free seminars, working with the owners completely for free, becoming such a high source of value and information for them that it was just like a no-brainer, like, what do you need from me? Apparently Gary Vee is that way. Apparently Gary Vee, everybody that knows Gary Vee and is friends with Gary Vee owe him just all the biggest favors.
Yeah.
Apparently Gary Vee's team are essentially like task runners. So doing favors for these people. Gary Vee will be like, hey, mail this person XYZ gift. And that's what his whole team is doing. So like Gary Vee, like all of these people just owe Gary all these favors because Gary is just providing so much value, doing so much for other people that Gary Vee doesn't have to go out and look for business.
Yeah.
Like he just builds up so much trust and rapport with people and does things for them that like he's just got a circle in that sense, which, at the end of the day, like there's those people that are right here trying to fight for certain things. The people at the very top have just given so much value away for free and became such an asset that people now come to them, right?
Yeah, they become, they just have so much more social credibility in the space. They're the expert, and having that, anytime that you can help somebody out is going to be generally a win-win.
And honestly, that's an investment in yourself at the end of the day too.
Yeah.
If you can invest in yourself to gain the knowledge and the value to help some capacity of somebody else's life, to add value to that, and then you give that to people without expectation of anything coming back. And that's been kind of a mind shift for me. We get so caught up in, this is what my time's worth. I have all this information, all this value to give. You kind of get scarcity mode with the mindset of that, versus it's a constant reminder for me of like, no, continue giving back, continue just giving that for free to some extent, having standards and parameters for what you're doing, because if you know what you're doing and you are a source of high value, eventually, you're going to be compensated for that. But you've got to go through that period. And if you think you're there, you're probably not there yet. You need to continue just adding more and more value, because you'll know once you're at the level with that. I heard a great quote the other day of, you start by getting paid for what you do. Then you start getting paid for what you know. And then you move to getting paid for who you are. Which is that's a banger.
That sounds like a cool place to be.
Right? That's a banger. I mean, you think about all those people. Think about Hormozy.
Yeah. People
come to Hormozy for who he is as a person, and he could do anything right now, right? He could open up a flower boutique and people would probably buy Hormozy flowers. Yeah. Yeah.
Throwback to Gary Vee with Crush It.
Are you a Gary Vee guy?
So Gary was one of the early ones. I haven't consumed a lot of his stuff honestly in a while. I should. I have his new book. I just haven't gotten into it yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of them out there.
There is, and for the most part, I feel like he's kind of had a pretty consistent message over the last few years. But I would say the people that I'm listening to the most right now is the Bob Proctor recordings. I listen to a lot of Alex Hormozy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the two biggest ones right now.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing is, and while there's so many options, there's so many of these people that are coaches, mentors, gurus for doing that, is find the people that are where exactly you want to be, or that have figured out the lifestyle that you want to have or to live. And that's one thing for me of like, I'm going to go directly to the person that is at the top of the game that I want to be involved in, or that I am involved in. And I think a lot of people just think in terms of like XYZ amount of money, but you need to also be looking at like the lifestyle, like the people that have accumulated a lifestyle that you want to have, that is not just the rat race. Because it's not all about money, but obviously freedom of being able to do certain things, freedom with your lifestyle. If you want to have the capacity where you're just working out all day, or you're working from home, or you're a nomad who wants to be working from their van, or you want to move to Bali, there is somebody out there that has found some level of success adding value that you can find and learn from. Don't just look for people that have success. Find the people that are doing things that align with the way your lifestyle wants to look like.
Yeah, if you can find somebody that's living the literal lifestyle that you want, that's who you should be learning from. Assuming it is somebody that has taught it to other people.
100%.
Because if you can find somebody to mentor you that has been where you're trying to go, that's fantastic. But if you can find somebody that's been where you're trying to go and has also taken other people there, that's who you should learn from.
Yeah.
Which in this case, Jason Phillips is that guy.
I do not get a ton out of just looking at purely financially successful people. For me, yes, that's a piece of the pie. But for me, I have always invested, listened to, and respected the people that were encompassing and investing into every aspect of their life, you know, between faith, family, finance, fitness, fun. Like, I don't really care if you're the fat guy in a Mercedes Benz, right? Excuse me. I want to look at the people that have cultivated a lifestyle where they have freedom, where they have a degree of fitness, and they are family oriented. Because to me, if they're not doing that, like, that is not the lifestyle that I want to be living. I don't want to be miserable working 18 hours a day with $50 million in the bank and completely out of shape and dying of a widowmaker heart attack by 60. Like, that's just not what I want to be. For some people,
are you sure?
I guarantee it. Yeah, I guarantee it. That's why I think like Tim Ferriss.
Oh, Tim Ferriss is probably Ben Greenfield and Tim Ferriss were the first podcasts that I listened to.
Okay.
Tim Ferriss is a big one that I should have mentioned.
From a lifestyle standpoint, that is a guy that I listen to and consume a lot of.
I need to listen to more of his stuff.
Because you talk about a guy that has been very successful on paper, angel investing into Uber and Facebook and consulting, makes $250,000 per week off of his podcast from sponsorships and listens. But the dude has accomplished more things in life, like horseback archery. He was a kickboxing champion.
He won some type of championship because he would throw the people off the mat or something, right?
Yeah.
He like actually read through all the rules and found a way to kind of...
He did like a 30-pound weight cut the day before and then gained it all back and like found a technicality. But the dude has like lived a life.
An incredible life.
Yeah. At the same time being relatively successful. But his whole focus is like lifestyle. Like, I want to travel. I don't want to be stuck to a laptop for 18 hours a day. And like, looking at that, like, that's what I want. You know, I want to have the means of doing things, but ultimately, why are we working for money?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's for a certain lifestyle and for freedom and choice to be able to do those things. It's not just money for the sake of money. So yeah, I mean, if you like listening to the Wall Street executive who has a miserable life outside of what he's doing there day to day, then maybe that's the person for you. It's not for me.
It might be where somebody wants to end up, but yeah, there's the nice thing, which is also a drawback, but there's so many people, so many guys that are in the coaching space as a whole.
Yep.
As an industry, it's something that's just exploded over the last 5-10 years, largely due to social media and the connectivity of everyone. But there's so many people doing it that you're going to be able to find somebody to learn from.
Yeah.
That's probably doing exactly what you want to do.
I think especially as guys, I think a lot of times, especially today, we isolate a lot. And if you don't have somebody, whether that is investing in yourself by having good friends around you, a good group of guys from an accountability perspective,
Yeah.
I really think that every single guy needs that either in the workplace with a friend group or paying the money to be in these groups or have a one-on-one mentor. I think it's really vital. I think you can get so caught up in the weeds and in your own bullshit and the thought processes, the stress of life, that you need those outside perspectives.
You do.
For sure. I think it's, the times that I have, I'm not going to say been miserable, but stressed out, caught up in the negative circles and thoughts are all the times I kind of isolated back away from that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't involved as much as I need to be, getting around other people that are like-minded. And also coming back to that theme of investing into other people as a form of investing in yourself. A great quote too that Aaron, the guy I was working with last year, would say is, when you're in doubt, focus out. Like, give value to other people, do things that are providing the marketplace somebody with value, because at the end of the day, like, that's the cure for it. It's not you making an extra 100K or that's going to make you happier probably at that point if you're struggling. It's doing something to provide something else value. What have been the most impactful books for you?
Most impactful books. The Compound Effect is one that I recommend very often. I think it was Darren Hardy, essentially talking about the small 2 to 3% changes that you can make, and how in the beginning it doesn't seem like anything's changing, but over time those results are kind of exponential because they build on each other. But it works both ways. So if you're eating a little bit too much, you're not quite going to the gym as much as you should, in the beginning it's not a big deal. You're gonna look the same, you're gonna feel the same. It's not gonna be that much different. But in a few months, maybe you're gonna gain 15, 20 pounds. Whereas if you did the opposite and you're eating a little bit better, moving a little bit more, spending a little bit more time in the gym, not a crazy amount, but a little bit, then you could maybe lose 5, 10 pounds. But that time is going to pass regardless. So Compound Effect is great for that. Ed Milet has a couple good books. How to Win Friends and Influence People is a classic.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I believe, Dale Carnegie. Or that could be wrong. What are your most influential books?
As a Man Thinketh. Can't think of the author right now. Concept of your mind being a garden. Something's going to grow regardless, whether you are planting good seeds that are bearing fruit or you're letting your thoughts just run wild and weeds are going to grow. Something's going to grow in that garden of your mind regardless, and you can be intentional about that, direct it towards something positive and beneficial, or let it run with the natural tendencies of negativity, being pessimistic. The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss. Man, it's a great book.
It is.
Great book. In terms of like lifestyle development, looking at and questioning the beliefs that we have. The 9-to-5-esque mindset, the things that we do a lot in Western societies that necessarily haven't been this way forever.
Yeah.
And like looking at that of like, everybody just accepts that that's the way it is. That's the way it should be. You live for the weekends.
Well, I mean, we're kind of taught that from a young age with the schooling system too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
living for retirement, all of these things, and looking at that and really questioning, is that the best case scenario for this one shot that I've got going around the sun? Other books would be How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's a good one.
I mean, just from, even if you're not a business owner or you're not an executive, whatever you are, I think learning human nature, and the main premise of that book is figure out how to give people what they want, and as a byproduct, you'll get what you want as a return. Because everybody is very self-absorbed or focusing on themselves. So if you can find a best case scenario where you're getting both, you're going to win life. Those would be the top 3 for me.
10x is easier than 2x is a recent one that I read. Also can't think of what his name is. We should have pulled up a list so we could actually give some...
we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. Some links to some of these books.
Yeah, Jamie, pull that up.
But 10x is easier than 2x is it talks about how setting a bigger goal, setting a goal that's 10x where you're at, is a better move and often easier because it's just going to require a totally different approach. So to get a 2x goal, you're probably going to be able to keep doing 80% of what you're doing now, and you can just work longer or harder to get there. You know how to get to a 2x goal. You can extrapolate what you're already doing, just do more of it. You're going to get there, usually. But with a 10x goal, you can't just work yourself to death to get there. Like, it's not going to happen. If it's 10x, you're going to have to do 80% new activities and 20% old activities. So you're going to have to act and have behaviors that you just totally didn't have before. And that's going to be easier than it is to grind out to that 2x. Which also actually aligns really well with some of the stuff that Bob Proctor talks about. He talks about having a C-type goal. So an A-type goal is something that you know how to do. A B-type goal is something that if everything goes right, you think you know how to do. But a C-type goal would be something that you have no idea how you would get there. But if you can take that blind faith into stepping out on that C-type goal, that's where your subconscious will start to align the behaviors and thought processes that you'll need to get there.
Yeah.
You got to you got to have a big goal. If you don't have a goal that's big enough for you to grow, nothing's going to change.
And I think that's where, at this stage of life, it becomes really easy to not have that.
Yeah.
You can get caught up in what you're doing now, day to day, for the next 50 years, and that's it.
Which is what happens to most people, unfortunately.
It does, man. And honestly, like looking back now, like where the last 10 years have gone, man. And I'm like, if I don't make these things happen now, it's not going to get any easier, and time's not slowing down anymore.
Did you click through the Alex Ramosi carousel that I shared on my story yesterday?
No.
So I want to read it on here.
Go for it.
Let me pull it up real quick. So it's a carousel. It says, how much time do you have? The median age for U.S. males, 74, the life expectancy. That means middle age is actually 37, not 50. But when you adjust for the perception of time, 1 year for a 40-year-old is 2.5% of their life. 1 year for a 5-year-old is 20% of their life. So as you progress, the chunk gets smaller, right? Meaning a year for a 40-year-old is 8 times faster than for a 5-year-old, which means your midpoint is more like 21. And it ends with, you don't have as much time as you think, make your move.
Damn.
We all talk about how fast, or how it feels like time moves faster as you age. And that's because it is. Like, the 1 year is such a smaller chunk of time. That's why it seems like things just fly by as you get older. And your perception of your life, that's wild.
And I can tell you, like, being 29 now, dude, if you're 21, like, start making those steps now.
Yes.
Invest in yourself early. And you know, we didn't really talk about too much. We talked about mentorship books you're reading, groups you're part of, but even relating it back to investing in your health, investing in your mind, investing in good relationships, your faith, if you're a faith-based person, like start doing those things now. I honestly believe that where I'm at is the result of having that mode of thinking, right? Of always investing in that, like getting into fitness earlier on and that being a habit that hasn't fallen off later on in life. Because if you start investing into those important buckets of your life now, when it does start speeding up by the time you hit 25, because literally like 25 to 29, I could have told you that 25 was yesterday.
Yo,
It's
for
gone
real.
by so fast. Getting married, having a kid amplifies that even more. And I think that your perception of time probably goes faster when you're not healthy, when you're not taking care of yourself, when you're not in good situations, when you're not working in an environment that you want to be working in. Because at that point, you're just kind of existing, right?
If you are stuck in that hamster wheel of living the same day over and over and over, I mean, you're thinking the same thoughts every day as well, and you're literally just living the same day over and over. That's going to go by real fast.
That kills me seeing people like that.
It does.
And it's a ton of people. It's almost like people get to a certain point and they're existing until it's time to go and almost living vicariously through other people.
Yeah.
Which that kills me too, of like, let's watch TV, movies, video games, and live vicariously through watching other people have experiences, live a certain life, accomplish certain goals, but not do that on your own. Like, it's just, man, that just kills me because that's how most people live. And it's like, why wouldn't you, knowing that you've got one shot at this, to some extent, set some type of goal for yourself to go after?
Tony Robbins says, I forget the exact quote, but his general principle is that happiness is found in progression. And that's completely true. Like the times in my life that I've had a goal that I've been chasing down and working towards something, everything in my life is better. I'm happier. I have more energy. Relationships are better. I'm more dialed in. If I don't have something that I'm going after, it's like you just kind of wander around and exist, just like you just said.
Yeah. For me, I can tell you as a fact that getting in with my coach, having a very clear target and metrics of what I'm trying to do, taking away from the end result, not focusing on that, but so like I'm just process oriented day to day. I've eliminated a lot of the things I'm looking at. My days are just flowing now. Like I've got these things I'm looking at. I'm excited to do them every single day, every single week. And I'm working towards that, and that's where I think that investing in yourself, you feel like you're stagnant in some capacity of life. Take the jump to do something. Go do something scary, whether that's paying the money that's scary, a challenge that's scary that you don't know how you're going to accomplish it or figure it out. Go sign up for a 100-mile race next year and figure out how you're going to train for it, because until you've got that on the end result, you're probably not going to make much change. There's got to be a catalyst for some type of change.
If you don't do that, if something doesn't change, something big, you're going to keep doing the same thing for the rest of the time.
Yep.
Like people think that there's going to be a perfect time to make a change, and that doesn't happen. Each day that passes that you're not making the change that you need to make, it's going to get harder until you just reach. There's an outcome in that scenario where something does change, but it's when they hit rock bottom. And that's not a very comfortable situation to be in.
No.
You can choose to change before you hit rock bottom.
A lot of people won't, but you can. You can choose. And honestly, that's a better case scenario, man. If you do that now, it's going to be easier. If it takes you 10 years to walk into the woods, it's going to take you 10 years to walk back out.
Yep.
I think that's, and that's one thing I love about our relationship is going on trips, going on vacations, we put it on the woods. Walking through the woods. We put it on the calendar. If we want to do something like, let's go caravan across to Utah. Boom. We put it on the calendar and we do it.
Yeah.
So many people are like, yeah, I'll get back to you. Like, let's plan on that. But nobody follows through on anything. Having people in your circle that are like, let's go do it.
Yeah.
let's make it happen is really important.
And because the more times that you're a part of that and the more times you do that, the more you realize that applies to anything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you make a plan and take action, that's how progress is made. But if you don't do either of those two things, you just keep doing the same thing.
Keep doing the same thing. Which is fine if you're happy with that. I would venture to guess, though, a lot of people aren't.
I would assume you're correct. And a lot of it is, unfortunately, it's so easy in 2024 to distract yourself. Like you can scroll through social media, get your dopamine hit, get addicted to watching Netflix or whatever it is. It's just too easy to distract your mind from reality.
I don't think most people could look me in the eyes and tell me that that's not the case for a majority of their life and what's going on right now. I think that you can look at the statistics on depression, anxiety, even people that are not even teenagers yet. Like it's wild that that's such a prevalent thing that we didn't necessarily have 50 years ago. We've got people that are just looking for answers, that are looking for something. I think that speaks volume to where we're at right now, just as a society in our world today, and why people use those distractions so much, whether that's alcohol, drugs, TV, sports, whatever it is. It's all just kind of distraction mechanisms at the end of the day.
It is.
And it's going to suck. It's going to be hard one way or the other, right? It's come back to picking your heart. You can have the hard aspect of life about being anxious, depressed, dissatisfied, or you can make a jump, invest in yourself, and start living life.
Start living life, man. You got to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself before the stock market, for sure.
Yeah.
I think too many people are throwing those extra resources into some type of retirement fund or stock market instead of investing in themselves and their income potential.
Or just your health.
Health, energy, all of it.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the stock market does if you're not around to see it.
Yeah.
Or if you feel like crap. Yep. I think it's a wrap.
I think it is. That was a good time.
It was a good time.
We'll catch you next time on the Forging Alpha podcast.
Peace.